Good morning and welcome. I'm Lisa, promoter of Jesus, sharing my story of faith through chronic disease and trial. And this morning I was reading Job 19, where at the beginning he continues to just share about how much he's hurting, and his situation hasn't changed. He still has all the pain and trial going on for him. And then in verse 23, he starts out by saying something along, that begins with, "If only my words were written in a book." And he kind of goes on from there, like, if only they could be chiseled in stone and, read forever, preserved. And it's just funny to me that he doesn't even know that happens. God was listening in his pain and suffering. God was listening to that thing that he maybe just felt like he was just uttering, like, oh man, if only my words were written in a book. And God honors that. He's listening. And later on, just a couple verses later, in verse 25, he says, "I know my Redeemer lives, and at last he will stand upon the earth." So even in all of his suffering, he goes on and on about his suffering, but then he says, "I know my Redeemer lives." He keeps talking to God. Even though his circumstance hasn't changed, he keeps coming to him. And then I also read Psalm 138, and I noticed in that David has a different experience with God, where in Psalm 38, verse 3, he says, on the day I called, you answered me. My strength of my soul, you increased. So he called to God, and on the same day, God answered. And sometimes we have that. Sometimes we cry out right then, and God delivers us from something or answers us right then, and we see what he's doing right then. But with Job, his hope continued, and his prayer, his dialogue with God continued, even though his circumstance was not changing yet. And God, like I said, was listening because he honored him with his words being written down in the Bible. So I just want to encourage you, do not give up. Do not lose hope. God is listening to you, even if your circumstances are not changing today. Keep coming to him. I know it's hard. That's the hard thing I encourage you to do today. Keep coming to him, even when you don't see your circumstances changing.